Okay, so thank you all for coming today. I'm Shelby Fiegel. I'm the director of the Center for Community and Economic Development on campus. And my amazing partner in crime, Stephen Shook, who is the director of the Center for Leadership Development, but also president of Staff Senate. And I do want to thank also our helpers today, Emily Cooper Yates with my team at CCD, and Melanie Watson with Conference Services on campus. And Melanie and Emily are going to be answering any questions you might have throughout the presentation. Just raise your hand and they'll come to you to answer those questions. I do also want to point out that we have a questionnaire if you do have questions, so we don't have to yell through our masks. You can actually text Stephen Shook 344 to 37607 if you want to go ahead and type that in your phones if you're interested in sending questions throughout the training. We'll check back with that at the end. While you're typing that in, I'll also say we have some safety precautions in place. We do ask that while you're seated and you move around, keep your mask on at all times. We are 6 feet apart at these tables. They're 6 feet long. 8 feet long. Wow, we did even better than the recommendations. And I do want to say if you do at any time need to get up and leave the room, the exit is going to be the door on the far, your right-hand side, my left-hand side. And that door over there is only for the entrance. So we do ask that if you exit to go to the bathroom, you exit and walk around and come back through the entrance. When we get done today and we dismiss, we'll all exit through that door and you can go down the stairs to McCaslin basement or go out through the bomb gallery. And I think we are ready to get started. Once again, if you have any questions, Emily and Melanie, just raise your hand and they'll come over to you. And I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to get us started.
Okay, awesome, Shelby. So first thing I want to say, everyone to realize, Shelby and I are not IT. So we do not know everything about Zoom. So what we're going to do is if we do not know an answer to your question, we're going to take it and then we'll send it out later. Okay?
We're really good at
We don't know everything, I promise you. People, y'all may think that, but I promise there's a lot we need to learn. So again, if you want to text anytime during today, text through to 37607, that name, that number, and then you can just text as many questions as you want. And then we'll get those at the end, that way we can keep going through the hour, okay?
And I think it's good to point out, this is a great tool to use in your, if you do have any in-person meetings, especially during COVID. We use Poll Everywhere a lot, and you can just set up a simple poll like this, and students, faculty, staff can share comments, questions that they have throughout a meeting. It makes things a lot easier instead of having to carry a microphone throughout the room and spreading germs and things of that nature.
Okay, everybody got that down? I'll come back to it later on, but just interrupt and text me instead of yelling at me. Okay.
Can you say that number? I can't read it.
Okay, so you're going to text in the text field like you would type someone's name, put 37607, and then actually the text message itself will be Stephen Shook 344. And then it'll say submit a question, and you just type it however you want and it'll put the question up there. Okay?
And I can show y'all a test of what it's going to look like because I have it on my phone. So the number is 37607, and then in my text message I put Stephen Shook 344, and I'm going to put hi, and it should appear. There we go, magic.
It's awesome. Lots of tools you can use to make this virtual environment more applicable. So, okay, so we're going to go through this today. This is the question I've already seen a lot of y'all talk about today. Some of y'all have the app, and then some of you have the website version of Zoom. So here's the difference. Let me put it in easy terms to think about. So I can go to Facebook, I can go to google.com, and I can type in Facebook, right? And I can access it. And I can also download the Facebook app on my phone and access Facebook through an app. So they're the same thing. Some people have preferences. I use the app because it's more updated. It's easier to use. The features are easier to use. But some people prefer the web. I think long-term it's easier to get in the habit of the application. Okay? So this is what the website looks like, right? Because I'm in a website browser. I think this is Google Chrome. And then also, I'm going to click open. Here's what the application looks like. So it's much smaller. It's not a website address. It just comes up when I download it on my phone or iPad or my laptop. Okay? So what I'm going to do, this is the most important thing that you'll do for Zoom, is setting up all these crazy settings that you see all these people use. So this is recorded, and I can't spend a full hour. Yes?
I just want to say, if you use the app and you have this below, it lists all of your Zoom meetings in order.
Yes.
Right, it'll show it right there where it says Stephen's no upcoming meetings today. It'll actually, if he had meetings today, show that on that homepage.
Exactly. Yep, so nothing today that I have scheduled. There may be other stuff people have scheduled for me, but those are mine. And then I have reoccurring. We talked about that last time. If I meet with, I have a friend, AJ, in my program. I meet with her every week. And so we just keep that same meeting open. We don't schedule a time. We just, hey, if you pop in, pop out, right? So that's a reoccurring meeting versus a scheduled meeting. So the most important thing, I want everyone to do this that has a laptop and is able to. You're going to click your picture or your initial in the top right hand corner and see it'll say my name, my email, and all this other stuff, right? Okay, the most important thing is you click settings. And as soon as you click settings, this comes up. Okay, so here's lots of settings, but I want to access every single setting without having to go through all these different categories. So I got to click view more settings. Okay? So this is the most important screen that you will ever use to update. There we go. Can y'all see this? Here we go. So anything you want to activate, I'm going to quickly go through what these are because you'll have a recording and then we'll help at the end if you want to know more specifics. But if I don't have something clicked up here, then it's not going to be available in the meeting. So the waiting room, for example, that is, if I don't want people to immediately come in the meeting, I just want them to sit in a waiting room. If I don't have that on, then I can't use that feature. Does it make sense? So anything I don't turn on, I can't use, and anything I have on is going to be used. Make sense?
Now, I want to give an example of when you would use a waiting room. So, for example, we did an Arkansas Racial Equity Summit last Thursday where we had about 200 people from across the state in attendance. So I created a waiting room. So participants, people love to, even though we're virtual, they love to join things early. It's just like when people show up to in-person meetings 15, 20 minutes early, people do the same thing virtually. And so I was speaking with my speakers and my panelists and my sponsors before we began the event. And the waiting room just acted as a place for them to hang out before we were ready to bring everybody into the meeting. So that's just an example of when you would use a waiting room. A waiting room is also a privacy setting that you could potentially use. If you don't recognize somebody's name who's trying to join the meeting, you can actually send them a chat before you allow them to come in. So let's say I'm expecting to have a meeting with Stephen, but Melanie Watson shows up. I can send a message and say, is this Stephen or is this Melanie? And then if they replied, oh, this is Melanie, I clicked on the wrong link, and Melanie goes away. Or, oh, this is Stephen, I was logged into Melanie's account for some reason. Let me in.
Yeah, very good. And we're not going to have time to go to all these things, but all these things have different customizable options. So like Shelby said, I can have my university logo when they log into the waiting room. I can have a nice greeting that formally welcomes them in the waiting room. You can add all these features to it, but today we're just talking about how to enable these features, okay? So we're not going to go in the weeds. Passcodes for meetings. Those could be important if hacking used to be a big thing. It's not as much anymore.
Zoom bombing.
Zoom bombing, exactly. So there's those things. Again, I'm just going to keep scrolling and highlight important stuff because we can't go through everything. So your homework after this is to go read through all these things and turn on. If it's blue, it's on, and if it's gray and black, then it's off. Okay, you want to turn on those things later. So I'm just going to go to what's important. If you want to start the meeting with your video on or off, if you want the participants to start with their videos on or off, it depends on the setting, right?
I would definitely warn people, though, if you're going to have participant video on and somebody's not expecting when they log into a meeting to automatically have their video on, because that's what that does. It automatically puts their video on. So you might want to tell people that's an expectation that you're setting for your meeting.
Exactly. Telephone. If people are going to call in, maybe they don't have access to a computer, they want to call in, you'll have to enable that. Do you want people to join before you as the creator of the meeting come in? I typically don't do that. I don't want students hanging out and then they're like, what's going on? So I usually say wait until I'm in there. Personal meeting IDs, which is unique to you. Do you want people to be muted when they come in? Right? Sometimes if you have 40 students, you don't want them all talking, or maybe you do. You need to decide if that's important. A lot of this stuff, if you're not sure what it is, don't click it. Okay?
That's a good roll of thumb.
So, good old thumb. Also, private chat is important. We talked about this last time. If I want to send Christina a private message and I don't want Shelby to see it, then I want that to be enabled, right? Maybe she's the co-host with me and I'm saying, oh, we missed a slide. I don't want everyone else to know that we skipped something, but I can message her.
And private chats are completely private. So if Stephen is the host of the meeting and Christina and Charlotte send a private chat to one another, Stephen cannot access that private chat. No one, only the two of them can access their private chat. So if you want to make a critical commentary about the meeting to one of your friends, you can do that and know that you are safe in doing so.
Don't talk about me, yes.
Okay, I have a question about muting.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you mute to where it says mute participants upon entry,
Yes.
but then what confuses me, it says the host controls whether they can unmute themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them muted, but I don't want to have to go in and unmute everybody during the meeting.
Yeah, Charlotte, then you wouldn't enable that.
Yeah.
So when you click mute participants, it means they are muted the whole time unless you want them to speak.
So if
Does that
I
make
don't
sense?
click that, that means they come into the meeting with the ability.
To go back and forth, but you as the host always have control to mute people.
Yep.
So there is, when we actually go into a meeting, there is a button where you can mute all. And make sure that if somebody happens to unmute themselves by accident, you can mute them as the host. And if they become very disruptive though, you can also choose to remove them from the meeting.
Yeah.
So I can mute in a particular meeting without having to
Yes,
use that.
yes. You would only use that feature if you absolutely want everyone muted. Like Stephen said, maybe if it's a lecture class on campus and you do not want anybody freely engaging in that lecture unless you choose to allow them to engage.
Okay, I didn't know you had both options
Yes.
for the meeting and that, so that's
Yeah.
I would not turn this on really, unless it's special circumstance. So,
Thank you.
yep, great question. Okay, so a lot of these co-hosts is also important. If Charlotte, you're leading a training and Christina's your co-host, if that's not enabled, she can't help you. So you've got to have co-host on. Just because you have it on also doesn't mean you have to use it. Sometimes it's better to have it on and you don't have to use it unless you want. Polling, we're going to get into that in a bit. So how do you poll people? That's important.
But you also make sure you have that feature turned on. If you do not have it on in settings, you cannot use polling.
Question?
We do not have, like, for example, I wanted to have polling on there, but it's not on there. It's not like, polling is not written on there.
So if you just turn it on now, your old meetings won't have that option.
Or are you saying in your settings you don't have an option for
Yeah,
polling?
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Do you have the UCA licensed account?
Oh.
Or is it just a regular
It's just
account?
I think, I signed it under the UCA Gmail account.
Did you contact IT to get the special
Yeah.
subscription?
Yes, contact IT and make sure that you get the official UCA account if you've not done so.
Okay, all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
So we're going to keep going. Screen sharing. I think Shelby and I are going to talk about that. A new feature that we talked about today. If you want to share your screen, people need to see what you're doing, what you're clicking. It's great for tutorials. And what else have y'all used screen sharing for?
Yeah, we use screen sharing a lot, especially when we're having presentations from different people. But also screen sharing is really important if you do breakout groups and we'll show a whiteboard setting where everybody can share with each other. Or if you do activities within the breakout rooms, or you just want to show a video or something, video sharing, when you screen share and show a video, works great. It looks awesome, it sounds great. We never had any issues with that. So it's definitely a great tool to be able to use.
And important, y'all, this is important. I run into this every meeting. The number one thing I think I have a problem with is who can share. Because students are trying to show me something, but if I don't have all participants on, so there's a benefit to it,
Yeah.
right? If it's all participants, then everybody can share their screen, but if it's just the host only, I can. So you got to determine whether you only want to share your screen or do you want to allow other people to show you what they're doing.
One way to get around that as well is if you have someone that you know is going to also want to share their screen, you can designate them as a co-host in the meeting, and then they get that ability when you have the host only on and not all participants. When you designate someone as a co-host, they automatically are able to share their screen. So that's a good way. If you only have one or two people in a group of 40 or 50 that are going to need to share their screen, I would go with the option where you're just designating them as a co-host.
Yeah, you can have as many co-hosts. Everyone can be a co-host.
Yes, you can assign everybody to be a co-host.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would want to do that, but you can.
Again, just read through all this. Shelby told me about this today. I forgot about it. The whiteboard. We're gonna show you all how this works for being interactive, letting people give input during class or during a training. Drawing, writing text, we'll go through that. So I would just keep it on. Again, you don't have to use it, but keep it on. Remote control. So I use this all the time. I have people that get in trainings and they're like, I don't know what to do. And so I request remote control and I can take over their mouse and click where they need to go. So this is a helpful tool. Say you're learning how to use Excel or a program that's more complex. Someone can request remote control, take control of your mouse, and click and show you what to do. Okay? Faculty members, this is good for y'all to help if you're teaching like a programming or more in-depth class. So, nonverbal feedback. You want to talk about that, Joe?
Yeah, sure. So nonverbal feedback is when Stephen actually pulls up a meeting, we can show you exactly what it looks like. Basically, participants can, it's almost like reactions, but it's within the participant module. It has like, you can say, if you're speaking and sharing a presentation, am I going too fast? And people can share if they think you're going too fast or going too slow, or you can say, does everybody need a break? And they can click this little coffee mug that indicates they need a break, and it'll show you how many people answered, reacted that way. So if you have a group of 50 and 30 people say, you're going too fast, obviously you're going too fast. If one person is saying you're going too fast, maybe that's just their personal preference. So you can actually gauge how people are interacting with you doing that presentation without that verbal feedback.
Okay, and then also meeting reactions, that's the clap hand and the thumbs up. We'll talk about those. Those are just simple, quick reactions. If you need a quick.
We love using that when everybody's leaving the meeting and you just want to say bye. Just a little reaction.
This one's good. Allow removed participants to rejoin. I don't know, it just depends. Like, if you kick someone out, you probably don't want them to rejoin. So
Yeah, I think it depends on the nature of the meeting.
So this next one I use all the time, allow participants to rename themselves. So I do a lot of trainings where I have people put in groups, and I have them rename themselves as like group 1 or animal type or a color. And that way when I break them out into groups, I know, okay, on my blue team, I can see their name, they're blue. I put blues in a group, greens in a blue group, so on and so forth. So it's good. I would just have this on. People want to rename themselves. Helps you put people in groups. Okay, now we're going to go to advanced settings, so hope y'all are ready. Breakout rooms, right? We're going to talk about these today. Super helpful to get people to communicate in small group settings. I say for every 30 minutes of Zoom, you need a 10-minute breakout, right? Just to give people time to kind of talk and to share. It's important. Closed captioning, I've never used it. I think right now they actually have live transcription. I didn't know that. That's new. It's not the most accurate right now.
No, I've seen people use the closed captioning before, and my experience when I've seen it used, it's been inaccurate. But I mean, it just, once again, depends on your meeting. If you really need it, maybe use that function. I would probably steer away from it though, because it's not, like Stephen said, as accurate as it needs to be.
Okay, here's a big debate. Virtual backgrounds. Me and Shelby kind of feel the same way. We don't really like them because we want to kind of see your environment. But maybe there's an opportunity where you're representing an organization and you have that organizational shield background and you want to look professional and have your name and your company logo. You know, that could be something.
I think that's the only time I would say it's appropriate to have a virtual background, unless you're just in, for some reason, a place where you're having to take a meeting and your background's just inappropriate and you would have to have a virtual background. But I say it looks very awkward. It makes people, their heads get cut off, their hands get cut off. It just looks very strange. It does not give context to where that person is. It just doesn't work for me. I just don't like it.
So this is really important. If somebody doesn't have Zoom downloaded, I just turn this on. Never turn it off. Anybody can join if they don't have Zoom downloaded if they want to be a part of the meeting. Okay? Just always keep that on. Here's that request permission to unmute. I wouldn't turn that on.
And Stephen, also the allow live streaming. I don't know if anybody would ever use live streaming in this room. We've used it quite a few times. We actually did a trivia show this summer, and we live stream that on Facebook. It's a really simple button. We'll show you in the meeting what that looks like, but you can also enable that if it's something you're interested in.
These are all just notifications. I would just read through these if you want to be bothered or not with notifications. That's personal preference. And I think we are at the end. So let's see, there's a lot of stuff. We went quickly. So your homework again is you got to go back and read through all these things. And these settings you have apply to all your meetings going forward. So you got to, I would just keep general settings and not have to go in every time and change things up, because that gets really confusing.
I go to schedule privilege.
Say that again?
Schedule privilege.
We'll go through that later. That's a little more advanced too. Yeah, save that, text me, or write it down, and we'll come back to that. Okay?
Do you always need to have the disabled personal meeting ID?
I do.
I would Charlotte just because it's a security feature.
Yeah, just keep it on.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
But do you have to have that in the email?
Mhm.
It will, so whenever somebody signs up for Zoom, it will send them that link and it will have all that information. Typically, if they're coming from the link that's sent from Zoom or directly copied from you, when they click on the link, it won't make them enter that personal meeting ID because it's coming from that link. But I've never had a problem with it either way.
Yeah. Good question. Okay, so we're going to go into Zoom and we're going to talk about what it's like. Actually, let me go back to show you all even how to start a meeting. I should have done that. Okay, so here we are at the front, right? I can schedule meetings if I want to schedule them weeks later. I can do reoccurring, or I can do a one-time meeting. I can join a meeting. I never use this because I just click on a website link. So you could type in all these credentials, but that's confusing.
See, that's where Charlotte, if you wanted to look up a meeting, you could use those personal IDs
Yeah.
and passcodes and things like that. You're just not, nobody
It's
says
confusing. It's confusing.
Yeah.
Steer clear of that. So new meeting. Here's where we're going in. I'm hosting a meeting. Okay. Joining the meeting. Awesome. So where are we now? Okay. So waiting room. Or wait, yeah. You want to cover waiting room?
Yeah, sure. So I think we already talked about waiting room and the benefits to having one. So Stephen has this toolbar pulled up on the side. If you go to participants, that's where you see this. If you have a waiting room and people are joining your waiting room, at the very top of the participant list, it will have who is in the meeting at the waiting room. It'll give you their name. You can admit them as they come in. You can wait until it's full. You can choose to admit everyone in the waiting room, or you can choose to admit people one by one. Typically what I do is I wait until that fills up, admit everybody. When people come in, just admit them as the meeting goes on if you have somebody start late. I think we've already covered pretty much everything you need to know about the waiting room. Recording. So down in the bottom on the toolbar, you'll see the record button. I just want to point out there's two options here. How many of you record on your computer? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you record on the cloud? Okay, so the downside to recording on the cloud is there is a limited amount of space that you can fill with your recordings. When that space runs out and your recording will not save. So just be aware of how many meetings you're uploading to the cloud. The benefit of the cloud is it is accessible through Zoom. So all your recordings are accessible within the Zoom platform. I tend to record from my computer because a lot of my meetings are really, really big. They're like 5-6 gigs large. And so when you record on the computer, at the end of the meeting, when you close it out, Zoom will ask you where you want to save that at. It will automatically save to the Zoom application or your documents or downloads. I don't like that because I can't find it, so I choose to save mine in Google Drive. And just so everybody knows, Google Drive, we have unlimited space at UCA. Make use of that. I always save to Google Drive. You gonna show something, Stephen?
I was going to show the Google Drive.
Okay.
It looks like when it's in there. So whenever you download it, what I always do, like I had a nursing leadership training day yesterday, I recorded for some students and faculty, and so I have my audio. People just want to listen to the recording.
Mhm.
I have the video. I have the chat text, so what people put in the chat, and then Those are kind of the same. M3U, M4A. Those are
It's just different file
different
types,
file
yeah.
types. Don't worry about that. But I always just share pretty much the MP4. That's the full video, audio. They can see everything. All I have to do is right click it, share it with Shelby, and she's got my video.
Yep.
It takes 2 seconds. We're not going to have time to do Google training, but you need to also make sure that your settings for how you're sharing, right? If I want Shelby to view it or change it or comment on it, I need to think about what the settings are.
And Emily, can we restart the recording? I know that it's about to run out of time. Thank you. The only time you would really use that audio only, we do a podcast, so it's very convenient for us to just have that audio already exported for our uses. But typically you're not, like Steven said, going to share just the audio with people. Do we want to show where you can set up a poll, Steven?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can use polling, but you do have to, you can set them up during a meeting. I would suggest to set your polls up before the meeting begins, because you actually have to do it within the Zoom platform. You can't do it within the meeting.
I'm trying to think which one I set up an actual poll for today.
But with polling, we like to use polls for evaluation. So we always have a poll set up for the end of our meeting to evaluate what is happening in the meeting. We also might, if it's an interactive, if we want some interactivity, we might pose a question during a presentation and allow people to provide feedback. But primarily we use it for evaluation purposes. And so when it does launch the polling, Stephen can show you how to set it up. But you can have a title, you have your question, you can make it single choice, multiple choice. You can also use it as an icebreaker, potentially. We've used it that way before. And when you do a poll, it saves within Zoom your polling results. So you don't have to write those down during your meeting. Within the Zoom platform, it's going to save those results from your poll. So like for evaluation purposes, it's saved in there. I don't have to worry about taking a screenshot or writing down how many people said very likely to attend another meeting, least likely, don't care, whatever it might be. And when you launch your poll, if we have people in the meeting right now, it would actually show how many people have responded. So you'll know if you have 50 people in the meeting and your numbers only indicate 45 people responded. If you really want to wait until everybody responds, you can check back and say, hey, we have a few more people that need to respond to the poll. If you think that's good enough, 45 is the majority out of 50, you can go ahead and stop the poll and share the results. So you can actually share the results live with participants. So if you're using it for an interactive feature, that would be good to share it and let everybody know what the majority's opinion was. But if it was for evaluation purposes, like I said, you can choose not to share the poll because that's internal for your organization.
And this is a good way to tell if people are paying attention. If they're
Yes,
not,
yes.
if half the people are answering the poll, then they're not paying attention to
Yeah.
you. So,
True. Okay, and another note I wanted to make when creating a meeting is registration. That's an option that when you're setting up your meeting, we don't have to show this necessarily, but you can actually choose to allow people to register for the meeting. And so what that means is, if you haven't used that option before, typically, we create a meeting, we just share the link out freely, right, with whoever we want to share it with. For more security purposes, or potentially if you're doing a meeting where you're taking registrations, maybe it's a paid event, and you want to make sure the right people are registering that need to be in that meeting, you can actually make people register and ask questions like you would on a traditional registration form. So first name, last name, email address, phone number, address, whatever information you want to get. If you want to put in some questions about demographics, you could put that there. You can ask age, gender, race, anything of that nature. We like to track where people are from in the state, so we know who we're reaching from what corners of the state. And then you can also, with registration, actually add an approval to that. So I mentioned earlier about the Arkansas Racial Equity Summit. We wanted to make sure we didn't have any of those Zoom bombers. And so when people registered, I got to actually go in and approve whether they got a link join or not, based on who it was that was registering. And a good example of that working is we had somebody named Elon Musk register for the event. If I did not have that approved registration, Elon Musk would have been able to join our event. Most likely that was somebody that was there to cause disruption. And so I did my due diligence though. I sent an email to Mr. Musk and said, can you please explain why you want to join our meeting? He did not reply, and so I moved on and disapproved his registration. So that might be a way you might use that registration piece.
Okay. So now we're going to go back to talking about how to use controls as a host. So now we're actually in a meeting. We're finally to the part where we're actually in a meeting. So we did the first thing right is muting, and all you got to do is click it. But the thing as a host, you see all these little tiny, called like carrot.
Yeah, that's what I've heard it called before.
If you click on them, again, I would not get super caught up in the weeds of this stuff, but it gives you a lot. If you're on the wrong microphone, if I want to change microphones, I can switch microphones. I can, all these different audio settings. But the main thing you need to know is mute, unmute, right? And if you're unmuted, see how I'm talking, my bar's going up. And if I am muted, then it has a red slash.
Something else you might want to point out to your participants, we have a lot of people that have issues with technology that we work with often. We're in Zoom, they might not have a stable internet connection, so if you actually go to mute in the carrot, there's an option to join by phone, on the mute button, Stephen. Yeah, there's an option to join by phone, and if you click that, it will actually give them a number where they can call into the meeting. So if you're talking to somebody, the connection is unstable, you can suggest to them, hey, go to that carrot, click join by phone. They just dial in a number and they're automatically connected to the meeting with their cell phone, which actually helps a lot, especially when you're meeting with somebody in a more rural area. Or if they just have, I've had unstable internet in Conway before, so you just never know what will happen. And that's what it'll look like.
So videos over here, same as mute, click it to mute, click it to unmute. Other thing is virtual background, which again we talked about, we didn't really recommend, but you can change, this is even downloaded, but you can upload a virtual background that you want and then use that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, like Stephen said, if you're representing UCA at some function and you wanted to have like a UCA watermark behind you, that might be an appropriate time to have that virtual background.
And then recording, it's very simple. Click record on this computer, record on the iCloud. The important thing to remember is you can pause the recording. See at the top, there's that pause button. So if I need to have a private conversation, there we go. I can pause it.
During your lecture, if somebody is acting up and you want to pause and yell at them for a moment and then resume.
Also stop. If I'm done, say I only need to record 10 minutes of the meeting minutes and I want to send that out, I can just click done. And then it'll convert it at the end of the meeting and I can send that out. So really, really easy. Next thing is chat and what you call nonverbal feedback. So first of all is chat. Again, we talked about everyone. If you click this bar, it will also show other people's names. So Christina, I'm trying to send her a message. Her name will show up, Shelby's name, Melanie's, Emily, so on and so forth. And I have to click that person. All the time I see people type people a private message, but it goes to everyone. So make sure, or vice versa, right? So you're finding out everybody's weekend plans when we're supposed to be private messaging. So make sure you're looking at who you're sending a message to. And say I send a message to Christina, and then I want to go back to send everybody a chat, I have to go click everyone.
Make sure you switch back.
Switch
Yes.
back to everyone. Make sense? Okay, that's important.
And you can also share files. That's another good thing within the chat. There's an option to send a file, like a PDF or something, within the chat for people to check out if you want to share resources.
Yep.
And Stephen was also, when I was talking about the non-verbal chat where it was like, go slower, go faster for the presenter, there's where all of those are. And see where it says there's a 1 above go faster because Stephen selected that. So when people select these reactions, it will tally up how many people are sharing that feedback. So you might, if you pose a question, how many of you have been to Lake Ouachita? And people can say yes or no, and then you automatically have that instantaneous feedback from your audience.
And then our favorite ones, if you click more, there is a dislike, like, you know what those are? clap, and then like Shelby said, people need a break, they're burned out, we need 5 minutes to go to the restroom, grab something to drink.
And if they're savvy, they might be using these reactions without you even asking. So be sure to check those.
And then if you need to go away and take care of something real quick, there's also a clock you can click, and it means I'll be back, I'm away for the moment, okay? So, and again, here's that mute all button. If everybody's talking and I can't figure out who's talking, I just click mute all, right? And then they can go mute themselves and talk.
But it will also show, if you see at the top where Steven's name is, and it shows his microphone is on, if you see somebody's microphone on and you just want, if somebody is speaking that needs to be speaking, and you see Steven pop up out of nowhere and his mic all of a sudden is on, you can click that mic button and it automatically mutes Steven. Or if you see somebody, I have before in a meeting had someone's child run in naked to a meeting, and I make sure I close their video for them to offer them some privacy because the mother was taking care of their child. So that's another way you might could use that function too. If you see something happening, just hide their video and they can always come back.
And then, oh, where are these new? I don't know, have you seen these?
I didn't know they had the celebration. They only ever had the thumbs up and the clap.
Yeah, we're learning
that's it.
today. So
Yeah.
I'm just used to these two. There's apparently
Yeah.
more quick reactions. And if I click it, see it goes in the top left-hand corner. So you could maybe vote this way too, thumbs up, how are you feeling today, party, sad, happy, you can do that as well. So all these nonverbal feedback tools that you can use. So next is screen sharing. This is probably one of the most important things that you will use if you are presenting and talking with people. So as soon as I click it, look, I have these options. I can share my screen. I can share a whiteboard that everybody can collaborate, draw, text on, all those things. I can share my iPhone or iPad if it's
That's if it's linked.
If
It
it's
has to be linked.
And then I can also share what I call like a specific, say if I have PowerPoint up, it'll come up here. Okay, this is my desktop whiteboard, and then this is anything else that I have that's not my desktop will show up. But right now, I actually want to show the whiteboard. So show the
Has anybody ever used the whiteboard feature before? Okay.
What
Good.
is this? So you can draw.
So when this is shared, so it will actually come up, if you're a participant in this meeting, it will show this whiteboard that Stephen has on his screen. And actually at the top, Stephen, where it shows that you're sharing, that green bar where it says stop share, for participants, that will actually say whiteboard options, view options. They have a drop-down menu they can use, and there's this little feature that says annotate. And if they select annotate, they have access to use the whiteboard as well. So it becomes a collaboration platform. And so you can, I don't know why you would want to draw, but you can. I tried to draw Stephen earlier, it didn't work very well. I would think that you would use this with the text feature so everybody can write notes. Just today in a meeting I had with the Rockefeller Institute, we had a lot of our partners on, and we all answered a question that they posed to us, which was, what is the mission of your organization? So we were all able to type in the text the mission of our organizations and share why we type that. Yeah. So it was just very helpful. It's another way to try to make it collaborative, try to make it fun. You could have a drawing contest if you did want to use that drawing feature. Who can draw the best stick person or dog or whatever it is. You could do charades if you wanted to have a fun office party and try to figure out what someone is drawing. And I thought I would lose that if I had to draw something.
And another thing, again, you can share your screen next, but look at this. People often forget this. Share computer sound. If I have sound coming from my computer that I want them to hear, if that's not checked, then they're not, say I'm playing a video,
Yes.
they're not going to hear the sound. So it's little things they kind of hide in here that you got to really kind of troubleshoot and think about as you're going. But if I don't want to share my sound, then I would keep it unchecked. Okay? And always, if you're done sharing, you just stop sharing. Okay? Yes.
If you're showing a PowerPoint, but you still want to see people, how do you do both? Because I've done it where all I can see is the PowerPoint and then I can't see people.
Charlotte, they should have on the side, you'll never be able to see everybody in a group view. You could see a selective group of people. You actually have to drag them out though. Like if you want to see somebody in particular. Does that make sense?
See how I'm right here? You'll have 4 people probably below you, and there's an arrow you click that goes through everybody.
Will
Or
that automatically come up with the PowerPoint, or do I have to do something?
it automatically come up.
Yeah.
But to get more people, they're gonna have to resize. If there were more people, they would expand out.
And Stephen, you can actually also drag and drop. So like you said, he'll only see 4. You can actually, if you're going through and say you want to see Christina show up in those 4 people, you can actually select her and I can't remember the exact wording, but you can actually make Christina one of your designated tiles. If you wanted to see her throughout, maybe she's keeping time for you and she can throw up a 5-minute mark sign or something of that nature. But you can't choose who you see, but you can only see a limited number.
Okay, was there another question? Is that it? Okay. And the last thing is the polls. Again, you'll have to create them. And the important thing about that is whenever you pull this up, there again typically is a edit. No, there will be an edit button. Okay. And it takes you right to this page that some of you were on earlier, which looks just like this, right? So at the bottom, look, I have 2 different polls that I've created. So I could have 30 polls in one meeting. But now my polls in this meeting are not the same as the polls in my next meeting.
Yeah. You have to make them for each meeting.
So if I want to add another question, I'll have to type it in. And then I'll have to do multiple. If it's multiple choice, I can do that. If it's single choice. And then I'll have to type in different answers. And all the options. And then once I save it, you'll see at the bottom, look, I have 3 different polls now. And so the key is when you're in your Zoom, you need to make sure that you click again the carrot top. There we go. You need to click which poll you want to share. If you have 1 poll, great, it just pulls it up. But if you have multiple polls, you need to move between the different ones. Make sense? And again, these only apply to this meeting, not any. If it's a reoccurring meeting like this is, then it'll always show up. But if I have a bunch of one-on-one time meetings, then I need to recreate polls. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
And then the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the live streaming, which is under More. So you'll have options under your More to live on Facebook, live on YouTube, whatever you want to use. If you do select live on Facebook or live on YouTube, it's going to automatically pull up your Facebook, YouTube account, and you're going to choose what you want to log into. Facebook and YouTube internally pull everything together for you. They have platforms built in where you're going to fill out the details of whatever you're sharing. And then when you click go live, it goes live on your Facebook page. And you can choose what account that goes to if you manage multiple accounts, multiple YouTube channels. Ours is the CDI Central page. Good thing about streaming live is it records it for you automatically on your Facebook page. So even if you don't have a lot of people watching you live, it's already archived on Facebook forever and ever and ever. And you can actually download videos from Facebook that you recorded or live streamed on Facebook. So that's just an option. Many people probably aren't going to use that, but it's a good way to potentially engage more fans or students. I could see where maybe if financial aid wanted to like a live stream on their Facebook page and share what scholarship opportunities are available, we could get really creative with it. I don't know if that's allowed, but if we could, it'd be a good idea. And then breakout rooms is the final thing we want to talk about. So breakout rooms, only the host can control the breakout rooms. So co-host cannot control breakout rooms. Only the host. And so be very thoughtful when you're going to use a breakout room, especially if it's a large training or meeting, who has that host ability. And the reason I say that is we've run into a situation where we had 40, 50 people who needed to go in specific rooms who we did not pre-assign to a breakout room. And when I was the host, I had to take that on. And I was the one that was supposed to be giving instructions for the next piece of our agenda, and so we kind of had to scramble and get somebody else on my team to share that information while I was breaking people out of the breakout rooms. Typically what you're going to do, if you're just doing an icebreaker or you don't have specific people out. So you can choose how many rooms you have to break people out into. It goes up to 30, I believe. Is that right, Stephen?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think it's 30. Oh, no, I was wrong. There's more.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, there's a lot then. I thought you can only do 30.
50.
Okay, well, you have a lot more than I thought. So when you have those rooms, you choose how many you have, depending on how many participants you have. I normally suggest I wouldn't put more than like 10 to 15 people in a breakout room, because it's really hard to have intimate conversations with more than, I would even say 10 people. People tend to dominate the conversation, as we all know, and so keeping that group small makes it easier for everybody to be able to engage. I would also suggest having a moderator for your breakout rooms, even if it's something as simple as going through an icebreaker. If you don't have somebody designated as the lead to take everybody through that, the conversation might quickly get off topic, or just somebody that's aware of what's going on. You can also pre-assign people to breakout rooms. That's a more advanced feature. When you're setting up your meeting, you actually have a choice to do pre-assignments for breakout rooms. If anybody's interested in that, I think that's something Stephen and I could cover with you more one-on-one, because there's a lot of intricacies to pre-assigning that I've become familiar with. If you're not going to use it, it doesn't matter. So don't worry about it. And I think that's it for breakout rooms, unless anybody has a question.
Does it record all of the breakout rooms?
Nope. I'm glad you said that.
So that's a no.
You as the host, if you're recording, it will record, Zoom records what you see. So if you are in a breakout room, it will record that one breakout room. If you want to capture all breakout rooms, you need to assign co-host within your meeting and tell your co-host to record on their computer. So you can capture all of them. You just need to have co-host in the meeting and tell them they have to record and have it enabled for them to record. And then what you'll have to do is have some basic editing software where you can put that whole video together again, which isn't too hard to do. That was a very good question. I'm glad you asked that.
And that's more advanced too, so y'all, don't feel like you have to do that. But
No, you don't. And if you just wanted to upload all of those videos as separate files,
Yeah.
there's no problem with that. On our YouTube page, we typically try to upload everything as one singular file, so that's why I said that. But that was a very good point. Yes, as the host, and then also as the host, if you go in a breakout room, people can request for help. So in the breakout room as a participant, there's a little button that says ask for help, and participants can click that button. You'll get a notification as the host. Somebody needs help, it'll tell you who it is. And you can choose to leave your breakout room and go and see what that person needs. Or you can ignore it. You don't have to go if you don't want to. We actually had a texting group for our summit last week, and Melanie had someone in her group that said they needed help. We just sent a quick text to Melanie and said, hey Melanie, that person needs help. Do you got it covered? Melanie said, yep. Don't come in here, stay in your room. But if you do decide you do need to leave for whatever reason, the recording goes with you. So it doesn't stay in that room. It follows you wherever you go, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? It's recording everything you see, wherever you're going. So.
And one thing I want to add, again, we talked about automatic and then assign. So the reason I would use assign, so I do some leadership training with personality assessments, and I put them in their group. So I would maybe have, one of them's an animal classification. I would have a lion group, and an eagle group, and a koala group. So I would rename the groups based upon those, so I knew which group was presenting for each group. But if it's just discussion and I don't care who's in what room, then I just make it random. Does that make sense? And then the last thing to notice is these options right here. I use these a lot because what you can do is you can have it where the second you click in breakouts, we're done, they come back. But I like to give people time to realize, oh, we got a minute, we need to get our thoughts together. Let's take some time because we're going to come back in about 60 seconds. You can also say 15 minutes, and you could just say, in 15 minutes, close the breakout rooms. So there's all these extra features you don't have to use, but are good to use at times.
And you can also send messages out to everyone, if you're the host, to all the breakout rooms, even though Stephen might stay, and if you have 4 groups and Stephen might be in group 1 and he's the host, he can actually send a message out to everybody in all breakout groups and tell them if you have 4 specific agenda items, maybe you say, everybody move on to agenda item 2, everybody move on to agenda item 3. We're gonna close the rooms in 5 minutes. Also, when you close rooms, you have the option to give them 60 seconds to wrap up their conversation before it automatically kicks them out into the big room or out of the meeting, whatever it's gonna be.
And that'll pop up here, it'll say broadcast to everybody. Well, there's nobody in the meeting, so that's why I can't see it. So.
And I think the only other thing I wanted to discuss, Stephen, because we've covered pretty much everything on the agenda, is reports.
Okay, where is that? You have one question, good. Where's report?
So if you go, you'll have to go back to Zoom, actually the web browser.
Oh, I get what you're saying, okay.
Who was your question?
Reports, down at the bottom. Yeah. So how many of you use reports? Okay, Kristen, good. So reports are pretty much my favorite function of Zoom. This is why I like to use Zoom. So you can actually, you'll have, if you go back to Stephen, there's 2 different kind of reports you can run. It's a usage report and then like an attendance report, I think. Meeting. Okay, so the meeting report will actually show you your registrations for your meeting. So if you are requiring people to register, that's where you go to find your registrations. And that generate button, it'll generate it to an Excel spreadsheet. So if I'm making people register and I'm asking for their name, email address, and phone number, I can export all of that information there and copy all their email addresses and send out an update to the group that I'm meeting with. The usage report is really cool. So the usage report will actually tell you how many people, unique people, visited your meeting and how long they stayed in your meeting. So like that summit that we had, we could actually pinpoint the average amount of time people stayed in our meeting. We know specifically if Stephen joined, he might have only been there for an hour. It will track that time. So I know Stephen, even though he said he was going to be there the whole time, you were only there for an hour, Stephen, and I'm disappointed in you. No, you would never do that. But it's a really cool feature that you'll see the duration minutes. That's actually how long your meeting lasted. It'll show you how many participants. When you click on that participant, I won't make Stephen do that because we won't share the information of your participants. But if you click on that number, that's where it'll tell you how long they stayed in the meeting, who all was there, things of that nature. Oh yes, there's
It's just me and Leslie, she won't.
yeah, Leslie will care. Leslie, but you can see where Leslie actually logged back in. So those are 2, that's 1 person, but when we talk about our data, we would actually say, that only 2 people were in that meeting, even though it shows 3, 2 people, because that's not a unique visit. So you can look at it that way. And when you export that to Excel, it's really easy to determine that because you just sort everybody, by their name, and you can find the duplicates and remove those. Okay, that was all I had.
Okay, let's go to questions, and then we'll take group questions as well. How do I? Co-host and alternate host. I asked because it was said in session that co-hosts cannot control breakout rooms. So we answered that. Only hosts can do that.
So an alternate host, though, is actually a little bit different than a co-host. An alternate host would be, okay, Stephen, this is your meeting. If Stephen designates me as the alternate host, if for some reason Stephen has an emergency, say his car breaks down on the interstate and he can't leave the meeting, and let's say in that function that as the host, you wanted to do breakout sessions or you wanted to, if the host has to join the meeting before everybody else can enter, and if Stephen's broken down on the interstate, you're not going to be able to enter the meeting, I would hope not. So as the alternate host, when I enter, it gives me those host designation until Stephen is able to enter. Does that make sense?
I set up all Dr. Angela's meetings that way. What else should I be doing? And now.
As an alternate host?
Now she can't even get in on that alternate host, it's not working. So,
Can you be more specific? I don't think I understand.
I set up her meetings.
Uh-huh.
The only way for her I'm not gonna start her meetings, I'm not in her meetings, I don't.
Oh, so it's on your Zoom account. and you're designating her as the alternate host, I understand what you're saying now, but now that's not working.
All of a sudden, it's not working. Is there something else I should be doing, or is there some button I touch that she can't get in?
I would assume that might be in the settings, like Steven said. Go back and look at your settings and make sure that alternate host and co-host is enabled. Other than that, that would be probably a Zoom question, if it's not to do with your settings, because it should work.
So alternate host and co-host need to be enabled?
Yes.
Okay.
And where, yeah, is there two of those? There's an alternate host and.
Co-host should be for alternate host as well. Just make sure that co-host is enabled.
Yep, and it's all in those advanced settings that we showed.
And I would also say, also look at, so you're enabling her as the alternate host under her UCA email address, correct? If she is logging into Zoom without being connected to her Zoom account, it does not recognize that's who she is. Because she's just entering,
She's just clicking on.
yeah, she's just entering the meeting as kind of nobody, if that makes sense. She has to be logged into her Zoom account. Yes, yeah.
Kayla, can you talk about scheduling privileges now, or can we wait till we wait? Because that kind of applies to that.
Did we have any other questions?
We have a couple more. We'll do these are quick and we'll come back to that.
Because I know, Christina, we can follow up with you
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay, something just disappeared. Oh, y'all keep sending questions. Okay, can we get a notification or a pop-up window when someone adds a chat comment or reaction? Usually I don't have that displayed. So if someone chats and you're not in the chat box, it'll put a little red number.
It's
over-
not, it's really hard. You do have to watch for it though. It's not a big,
Yeah.
you don't notice it unless you're looking for it. It just starts blinking. It's like a little tiny light.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Yeah.
So maybe they should update that. That's
Yeah, but there's no other way to make that bigger or better.
There you go. Why do some breakout rooms record and some don't? Because it has to do with who the host is. Only the host is recording unless you tell co-host.
Yeah, I would definitely, all you have to do is just make somebody a co-host and tell them to click that record button and then your problem is solved.
Okay, we're gonna come back to schedule privileges. If you have a registration, do you need a waiting room? No.
No, not necessarily. Like I said, the only time I really use waiting rooms is if I'm doing some pre-planning for the meeting. I really don't like waiting rooms if it's an informal event. I think it makes it really awkward when people join and they just have to stare at a blank screen. I like for people, if they join early, for me to have some conversations with them and make it feel more normal, like they'd be walking in a room. And then if people are just hanging out and they don't want to talk, I mean, they can just sit there muted or with their video off. So I would only use the waiting room probably if I was having a more formal event like our summit. So.
And I use music a lot because I don't want silence, so I will play music as a host and not mute myself. I let people listen to music as we're waiting. So different strategies. This kind of depends on you as a facilitator. How do you want to connect?
I think we did that for our other Zoom 101 training as we played some music and people were really getting into it. You could tell they were vibing. They really liked it.
It is, what is an authenticated user? Are all my students authenticated?
An authenticated user would be somebody with a Zoom account. So like we were talking about with Dr. Angela, if they have a Zoom account, they are an authenticated user. That means they were a user within the Zoom platform. If they are not an authenticated user, so say anybody can use Zoom. If you have an email address, you can use Zoom. Actually, you do have to have an email address, I get. If you have that link, you can use Zoom. You do not have to have a profile in Zoom to use it. Authenticated users mean that you do have a Zoom profile. And so I don't think that your students should be authenticated. Some students, though, might have just gotten that Zoom information from IT and be getting links from you. And if they never bothered to go into Zoom and create an account, they might not be an authenticated user. I would think they would be, but it's possible they might not.
Schedule privilege, we do that too.